We're going to talk extensively later with this panel about the #1 issue confronting businesses in the state of Michigan right now. Also want to thank the representatives, the senators, and everybody here. Tell them if you would back at the office, pretty good behavior today. We'll see if I can use the reference. All right. And thank you to Channel 6 for coming out and covering this as well. Media coverage really helps get the word out. So what we're going to do, every 6 months, we do a pretty extensive survey, and you can see down the bottom, I have to mention these people, the Accident Fund Insurance Company. We've been doing this survey for about 14 years. The Accident Fund Insurance Company came to us about 6 or 7 years ago and said, we'd like to underwrite this because it's a fairly expensive situation. And we'd like to be a bigger part of our business community. We care about our customers, and we wanted to have an accurate kind of game plan to go by. And so we like to be part of this. So I really applaud them all the time. ROI Insight is the company we contract with to actually do this survey. And this is our third company that we've gone with. But the reason is that the guy who does it keeps moving. And we finally talked him into starting his own company. So he's in the Troy area, I believe.
Grosse Pointe,
Grosse
actually.
Pointe, okay, down one of the suburbs of Detroit. ROI Insight, his name is Paul King. Great guy, does a tremendous job, and you'll see as we go through this. So what we're hoping to give you is a little review of how businesses are feeling about their last 6 months and how they're feeling about the next 6 months. Now, we haven't broken this out by region yet because, quite frankly, you're the first ones to see this. And a little bit of this is still in the field. So this information won't change, but there are bigger numbers that will be coming in to validate what these numbers are. So this is kind of breaking news right now for you. And of course, where else would you go but Marquette, Michigan for breaking news, right? So that's why we're here. All right, so let's start with this. Tell you a little bit about it right now. The statewide survey, small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. The reason we concentrate there is small and medium-sized businesses are 97% of the businesses in the United States. So they really are the heart of information. It's a mixed mode survey, so it's all over the place. I mean, it's a representation from each of the different districts. It's, as you see, commissioned by and conducted by ROI. And you can also see that the actual end was December 4th. And I think we've stopped surveying in the field, just have to stop tabulating numbers. And you can see that it's a pretty good degree of accuracy. And so these are some of the key themes that came out of this. And then we'll go over these a little bit, show some graphs, and we'll get through it pretty quickly here. By the way, this is really informal. If you have a question, if something doesn't make sense to you, make sure you ask it, all right? Or if you have some insight, we want to hear that too, because like my dad always told me, you know, when you're talking, and he said specifically, Chris, you're not learning, all right? So I want to hear from you as well. Well, growth and optimism is showing signs of slight slowdown. Many of the small and mid-sized businesses enjoy continued strength in sales and profits. And you all know those are two things that go together, but they don't necessarily always relate, sales and profit. You can drive revenue. Anybody can pick revenue up. Mark your stuff at 50% off. Your revenues go through the ceiling. And then you call all your employees and help them find their new jobs because the company's closing. But profits don't always go with sales, so we're going to talk about those in a minute. There is a slight bit of uncertainty. Is there anyone in the room that doesn't have uncertainty right now? Anyone? Yeah. See, so that's what's echoing there, especially, I guess, given our political circumstance right now, no matter what side of the aisle you fall on, no matter how you feel about anything, business doesn't like uncertainty, okay? And we have a little bit of that. #1, finding qualified workers. This has been #1 the last 7, if I'm not mistaken, the last 7 of these Michigan Future Business Indexes. So that's 3.5 years now that this has been a real problem. And retaining those employees when you can get them, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about the networking and hiring temporary workers as short-term fixes. And we do have to look at something that's a little more long-term. And I think we have to dip down educationally as well. Just a little side note, I think we have terribly neglected our trades for a number of years. we told all of our kids, go get that 4-year degree, life will be good. And I've got a friend who is a neurosurgeon on Long Island. And one night over scotch, I'm saying things crazy like, do you have any regrets? And he said, yeah, I would have been a plumber. They make the same amount. And you can fix pipes. You can't fix mistakes when you're a neurosurgeon. Despite these challenges, optimism for their own growth and an improving economy. Okay. So, past 6 months, all growth indicators have slowed a little bit. Wage growth is down 10 points. Now, when this first started, we didn't see wage going up, this shortage of talent. About a year in, then what did we see? The natural consequence? You have to pay more to keep your people, you have to pay more to go get people, you know? And then we saw this revolving issue of how do you get new employees? Well, I steal them, of course, right? So I have to pay someone a little bit more. And that caused wage growth. But now you're seeing wage growth is off 10 points. This means that last index, 46% of the businesses said we're going to give a wage increase. This time, 36. I think what they've said pretty much at this point is wage increases don't help the shortage of help at all, right? So why give the wage increase? Hiring is down 5 points. This is a danger zone, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more on the panel. What happens when businesses can't get help? Well, there's a couple of things that happen. One is they say, okay, you 5 people, you now have to do the work of 7, right? So that's one thing that happens. Maybe an incremental wage, maybe some overtime, those types of things. Or, you know what, I don't think this problem is going away. Is there a machine that can replace you 3? Right? Because that's what happens. Business has to make their way to the next day. So hiring is down. Sales growth down 3 points, as you can see. This is when you get a 3-point bump like this. This is almost insignificant. So you could essentially say that's flat. They feel their sales are going to stay about where they are. Profits are down the same, but you could say that that's flat too. So that's not a bad thought in a time period you're looking forward to that you're a little uncertain about, to say no, we'll do the same. That's not bad. Investments are down 2 points. That's flat as well. What's the importance of that? Well, if you're making a little money and you're feeling good about things and you're pumping money back into your business, that's growth. That really is a growth factor. Okay, so this tells you a little bit about some of the trending indicators. The sales increase, you can see how it's gone. That's, for those of you in the back, that's June of 11, right? So we're rebounding from the great abyss there, right? 2008, 9, 10. And steadily, you can see sales increases are going up now in June of 16. They dipped again, and then they came back up. Now they're just off 2 points. Again, it goes down, but it's pretty much flat. All right, so profits, pretty much concurrent. You know, it's a funny thing because when you sit around, I run some CEO networks, and they're all people who own companies or run companies, and you say, how was your year? Because this time of year we do a thing called roundtable. How was your year from a professional standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a family standpoint? They always say, well, you know, we went from 70 people to 100. And it's always some kind of quantitative figure like that. And my subsequent question is, did you make more money? Because there are a lot of people who grow for the sake of growth, which is one of the worst things you can do. You should grow when the market demands you to grow, and make sure that profit accompanies, all right? Okay, next one. All right, so wage increases. I think what's happened is we kind of this time just have said, look, I can't pay any more wage. This is, if I start doing this, now you're going to be at the drive-thru and you're going to be paying $16 for your burger. You know, the product, the service, whatever it is I'm doing won't allow for the price increase required to make the wage increase. Plus, it doesn't help. Someone else comes in and offers them more money. Okay, hiring increases, same thing. This to me, this is only 5 points. This to me is my greatest concern in this whole thing. Because this to me says to businesses, okay, we're going to stay where we're at. We're not going to grow, so we're not going to need more people. That's not great. The second thing is, we're just going to have to find a way to replace people, right? And there's a danger in that, because if you replace too many people, how many of you have ever gone through, like, say, a GM assembly plant these days? Gone through one of the big threes or something? They don't look the same, do they? And there's an echo in the building, because they're making the same number of cars they did 30 years ago with 1/3 the workforce. Everything's coming in a different direction and meets up here, and it's all robots. Can't even scream at anybody. There's nobody there. Amy?
So do you think the trend of dropping in 2016 had anything to do with uncertainty over who the new president would be for the new administration? Or
You
did I
think?
miss that? I mean, just, I was thinking, what
Why,
happened
who
in
is the new
16?
president?
But, yeah, that's what happened.
Well, that uncertainty comes politically, and it comes in a lot of different ways. And I would say if you do, in the next 6 months, you may see that flatten out, because if the tax cuts go through, people will say, okay, there's a little light at the tunnel there. We know where we're going right now. But part of that, part of that is always there. There are a lot of different things that are factors of that. I like to equate it as best I can, and I think probably 80% of it is driven by just business statistics, just business stuff.
Chris,
Yes.
how much of that decrease is a result of employers not being able to find new hires?
Well, that's part of it too. Part of it is that people, it's like your unemployment rate, and all of a sudden there's another rate that says these people have dropped out of seeking for, jobs. That is part of it. That's absolutely a piece of it. And again, my worry is when you get to that stage, you still have to run your company. And so you've still got to find a solution, and especially if you grow. And we'll talk about growth in a second, because it comes up really late. Okay, Jeff? Capital investment, you can see it's pretty flat along there. I think business has done look at this, only 7-point swing since 2011. I think business has done a really good job of saying, okay, things are tough, or they're not tough, or whatever. Let's put X percentage of our budget back in as capital investment. Let's kick that new wing in the plant. Let's put new technology in the front office. Whatever we have to do. But they keep reinvesting, and that's a really good sign. And that's pretty emblematic, by the way, of Michigan. We're pretty conservative business people here. I just got back 2 days ago from the Research Triangle in North Carolina, where I heard 3 or 4 technology companies present on their products because they were seeking investment, right? But they do things very differently there, and they even view failure there a whole lot different. Failure here, you kind of hide your head for a couple of years. You may even move communities. There, if somebody's failed several times, they're like, man, this person's learned a lot. If you failed that many times, you've picked up a lot of lessons. There's a good chance they're going to succeed, right? So there's a lot of things that are different, but we're pretty conservative here in Michigan in how we reinvest, so that's good. All right, satisfaction with the economy. This one always is a dilemma for me because I've always said there's no bad time to start a good business, right? And that's a true axiom. There are a lot of great businesses right now that started in 2008. Matter of fact, every now and then I hear somebody present. One of the guys down there, his big technology company, he developed the touch screen technology on your iPhone and sold that to Apple and made $1 gazillion bucks. Now what he's doing is kind of social entrepreneurship. But he was talking about that, and he said, we started this company in 2008. That shows you how bright I am. But they're doing extremely well, right? So there's no bad time to start it. So when people complain about the economy, I always want to kind of say, but is that maybe more of an excuse than a reality? Do you know what I mean? Well, my neighbor's got a cold, so I probably should feel like I have. You know what I mean? And I think this thing is, I guess, more of a crutch than anything in my mind. But over 3/4, they feel really good. 76% are satisfied. It just, this whole thing, rather than run through the statistics, says we're satisfied with where the economy is. Now, what are we creeping along? 1.5, maybe 1.8% economically, GPM. We're in a pretty good spot, especially for Michiganders. It's stable. it's moving forward, it's increasing.
Do your metrics discuss what's happening in the city of Detroit with its rebirth downtown, especially on the east end?
Yeah, we'll give you a section there, but I can give you some firsthand anecdotal stuff if you want. What has happened down there is a couple of people really saw opportunity, and a couple of people jumped in to help their community a lot. So after the bankruptcy and everything, the slate was cleared, everybody said, okay, well, we'll fill that void. And when I say everybody, I mean the Illiches, the Kamanos, Dan Gilbert came in. And they came in for a lot of the right reasons, which was to rehab Detroit. Make no mistake about it, there's going to be an ROI on that investment. I spoke with one of Dan Gilbert's people about a month ago. They can't rehab businesses in the core city fast enough. They have 97% occupancy in these old buildings that they've rehabbed and turned into apartments and condos. Because technology kids and people who want the vim and vigor of a urban life are moving down there and fly. And there's cool stuff happening down there. I mean, there really is. I grew up in that area, and when I was in high school, you went to Detroit. That was date night. You went to Detroit, you had dinner in Grand Circus Park at Victor Lem's, and you walked across to United Artists or someplace like that and saw a play. I mean, it's just a wonderful place to be. And then in '67, all that changed for so many years. A bad culture came in, but they wiped the slate clean. It's incredible what's happening down there. There's a vibrance in there. It's like Detroit is smiling again. And as a guy who grew up there, I feel really good about that. I really do. And they have an influence on the whole state, by the way. I do a lot of business in China, have been. I've got a factory there I've had for about 24 years. When I mention Michigan, if they ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from Michigan. They all say, Detroit? That's the first thing you do, right? So what do you know about China, right? Beijing, Shanghai. You know Fuzhou? You know Sanming? You know. But so that's our monitor, so to speak. Right? Did I answer that all right? Did I get it right or wrong? Okay, so the rest of this we'll just run through. But look at here, satisfaction remains strongest in the Bay Area and the Upper Peninsula. You guys are so enthused. I mean, you are the typical small business attitude. It's like your building's on fire. Yeah, but it's just the back half. It'll burn up. You just really have that vibrance, and you also do. I got to tell you, you cut trail when it comes to working together and having coalitions. I don't know how many times I've ever come up here to speak, and I didn't have somebody in Marquette or in Escanaba from the Sioux and Ironwood. And I'm going, did somebody tell you how far that is? You know, but you do. You just all get together and you all know each other, you know? And it's wonderful. Anyway, this is a graph. I'm a visual learner, so we throw in these graphs, right? So that my economists can make sure that I understand it. Used to be in crayon, so this is a real so you can see the dissatisfaction from '06, and we got spiked there in 7, 8, 9. It went uphill, and then slowly it came down. You get these little blips, and sometimes there are little things, political. There the announcement of new pending legislation that might affect business, those types of things. But you can see they totally reversed, and people are happy about the economy. Okay, profit margins. This is where I live. This is my question. How's profit? Because if you're making profit, you're doing what you should do. Then you can subsidize other things. So after growth expectations reached an all-time high in June, that was just this last one. 41% now say that profit margins will stay the same over the next 6 months. More than a third expect the bottom line to improve. Put those two together. 79% of the businesses are going to do as well or better from a profit standpoint. That's a really good index right there. Okay, that's good for that. Don't start napping on me. All right, so here's about the bottom line. This is the graph. We actually put this one in to see who can look at this for a long period of time and not pass out. Right? Okay, greatest challenges to businesses. We're all aware of it. We're all aware of it, and it's been here now 3.5, 4 years. Keeping and attracting good employees. Number one, High Point, 22% That's a high point when businesses, 22% of businesses, over 1/5 say we can't get people. Finding new customers becomes the second. You know, it's an interesting thing because one of the things I love about our index is they bring in the practical, right? So if you talk to any business person, what's the bottom line? What do you need? I need revenue. What's revenue? It's customers, right? So when you say, you don't find this on many big indexes, but when we say, what are your biggest challenges, that's one of the things they write in, finding new customers. That's one of my biggest challenges. If I don't find new customers, I don't do well. So that's second place. Managing growth. Let me explain managing growth a little bit, and I'll tell you why, because I've had a lot of interaction with 1,000 businesses. This doesn't mean, oh my God, we're growing so fast, what do I do? This means I could grow faster if I had people. That's what that means. We can't grow because we can't get people. So 1 in 3 are very closely related here. Taxes, the economy, again, up there. Healthcare. Healthcare went from number 2 a while back to way down there. How many people, you've got businesses in here. Don't look at how your neighbor votes. How many people are dying to have the ACA repealed? Yeah, okay, well that's kind of my take. At the time that ACA came in, I was the chair of the National Small Business Association. And actually met with the president a couple times on small business issues, once here in Detroit and once in DC. Matter of fact, I was in the Rose Garden when we signed the jobs bill, because in the jobs bill was crowdfunding, and I had lobbied really hard for crowdfunding. But we sat around as a board in Washington, DC, and couldn't decide if it was a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it just, yeah, we don't like it, and it looks like it's not going to do well. What's its replacement? And is it worse than what we had? Which I don't think it was. So there's some of these things that even all of us business people don't agree on, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's marginal here or there. Okay, Jeff. Okay, top reasons for optimism, business growth. So that's pretty flat, actually. It was 12% in June. Now it's 14%. The economy is improving. People feel good about that. Again, kind of flat, but on the upside of flat. Sales are up. That's up 1% again. Great staff. People love their staffs. Boy, if you don't love your staff, this is a hard thing to verbalize, but I have always said, I don't want, and Jeff's heard this 1,000 times. Jeff Mosier, by the way, is my guy here, general manager, etc. Without him, I'm in a different place giving a speech to an empty room. I mean, he keeps things going. But if you don't feel great about your staff, or they don't feel great about being there, you've got people, worst case scenario, coming to work. That's all they're doing is coming to work. And they're coming to work because they're required to come to work certain hours to get a check, right? That's the worst thing that can happen to your company. You don't want people coming to work. You want people enthused about being there because it's a place they can contribute. It's a place they can improve. It's a place that they like to go to. I mean, all those things. So culture is a big, big part of this. And you can see, we're feeling pretty good about our staffs, right? They feel good about their customers. Business in general feels good about their customers. Demands for the products and services, et cetera. You can see how it runs on out there. Okay, projected sales and growth. Growth's expected to slow a little bit. Sales and profit projections remain pretty positive. So people are probably saying a little bit about, yeah, we're not going to grow. Well, the reason is, well, we can't grow. We can't get people, so we can't grow. But we think we're going to do well. We feel good about that. And it's interesting in the small business sector how important attitude is, because let's take, for example, a small retailer, right? So a small retailer is sitting here in the spring of last year ordering their Christmas stuff, right? Because that's kind of how that industry works. They're out 6 months. Any retailers in there? You're usually about 6 months out to 12. And they're ordering their stuff. Now, in their mind is, what's going to happen in that season? How many people are going to walk in? How many people are going to buy? That sort of thing, right? So if they're enthused about that, they're going to buy more. They're going to have a wider variety. And they're going to probably hire more people because they anticipate things coming in. So you can see the effect that that attitude has. All of a sudden, they're spending more money, that gets more money in the cash cycle economically, and it probably leads to a little more employment, right? So they find people, unfortunately. Okay, expectations for increased sales, highest in the UP. Again, love you guys. I mean, I really do. I really do. And expectations for increased profits are highest in the Bay City and in the markets. Lansing. We're pretty enthused in Lansing too. As confusing as our existence is there with politics, we're pretty enthused. Okay, projected sales, you can see the graphs again. This is for my sake so that I can understand what I just told you. Projected profits again, same type of thing, and flat for the most part, as you can see. Okay, hiring trends, 31% say they plan to hire more employees over the next 6 months, down from a record high of 39. 8 points is significant. That's a significant drop, so you got to pay attention to what they're saying. And what we know they're saying is, in many cases, I'm going to kind of give up, or I found a better way to do this with fewer employees. 53% going to remain the same. So in combination, I guess those numbers are pretty good, because if you're going to remain the same and not hiring, that's still a pretty good number that are going to sustain, right? The employment base. Projected layoffs, 64%. I got to tell you, when I look at that figure, I'm saying, well, those are businesses not doing business correctly, or they're in trouble, or their product is going away as a necessity. Because if right now you're not thinking about hiring or maintaining, you're probably doing something wrong. Hiring projections the highest in Lansing, so we're going to hire more people there. That's because of term limits? No. Next. Okay, let's run through these because I saw a couple people at table B there nodding off. Just kidding. Job candidate availability, the majority, 51% of businesses again indicate difficulty with filling job openings. You're going to hear from the panel on this. This is a hard, cold, terrible fact, and hopefully from the panelists you're going to get the solution today. It's a lot like getting a 2% off coupon. 67% of those actively searching for talent are having difficulty. Again, and we talked about this earlier, it's not just that there's not enough people, it's there's a mismatch of skills. It's that if you've got this number of people, this number of jobs, and they're the same number, you can't always put them in a blender and have them make a mixture. So we got a lot of unskilled unemployed. Okay, brought this on ourselves, by the way, and I don't want to point at the auto industry, but the auto industry probably spawned it inadvertently. We paid a pretty good wage to a lot of people with no skills. That sounds harsh, but that's the reality. And so when the auto industry starts contracting, where do people with no skills go? Right? They don't go back to the job market. Okay, Jeff, I think we can run to the next one. Projected wage increase, the same thing. We talked about this already. This is kind of a rehash, but you're still looking at a pretty good number who are going to keep their wages the same or raise them a little bit. There's the data for it. All right, healthcare benefits. Anybody finding healthcare to be a challenge? So is it a paralysis that's going around? Or? It's okay to raise your hand. How many people are having trouble with healthcare? Is that an issue for their company? Okay, all right. So not too many, okay. Well, let's run through healthcare then, go to the next slide. Projected investments, 45% plan to invest in employee training. This is an important figure right here, because as I said, not only getting new employees, but retaining them is a job. And one of the best ways, believe it or not, to retain employees is to keep training them. It shows your investment in them. It gets them more enthused about their future because they're going to have more skills and such. So that's something to look at. 24% will invest in office equipment. We put this stuff in so you get a feel for our business is going to go out there and actually purchase where it matters, right? So advertising, we threw this in for Channel 6. I want you to take this figure today. So a lot of people are, go back.
Oh, sure.
50% are going to invest in advertising. Now that's down from 6% in the advertising piece. That's usually more often than not kind of a budget function. But the other thing that's happening in that industry, in the advertising industry, a lot of consolidation. So it turns out that a lot of people, at one time I did a morning radio show, and it was for a friend of mine who talked me into doing it. And I did it, and then he sold to a conglomerate, who sold to another conglomerate, who then became a third conglomerate that was making decisions in Las Vegas. So it didn't matter what was happening in my marketplace. Somebody in Las Vegas was saying, well, here's, you know, the cookie cutter, so let's cut advertising 5%, right?
Did you guys get into the resolution of what they mean by advertising? Because I know that certainly has changed over the years.
Yeah, so you're talking about the money that moves over to social networking.
Are they talking about geofencing, or are they talking about print ads?
Right. So, no, we don't. We just want to know what that budget line, we don't know where they're spending it, but where that budget line is. But you know what? You should make a note. It may be time for us to start peeling that out, saying, where are you spending your advertising? The thing is, when you're keeping people either on the phone or on the computer filling out this survey, there gets a point where they're like, yeah,
You only ask
I don't think so, not without being paid. You know? So we want to make sure we don't keep it there. Okay. Okay, so the conclusions, future investments in hiring wages to attract qualified employees, obviously, that's what people are going to have to do. Slight increase in concern over taxes, how they affect small businesses' ability to remain profitable, but we just got semi-good news about taxes from a business standpoint anyway. And then Washington, D.C., decisions regarding taxes in the ACA. How will that affect? So those are some things to watch, and that's pretty much it. I will tell you this. You can go on the MichiganBusinessNetwork.com website. You can go to your app store. There's a free app that basically is a little tie that looks like a microphone. Get the free app, and then you can, it will be, the finished will be on next week, the end of next week?
Once accident fund's ready to deliver, we will follow their lead.
Okay, very good. So probably the end of next week, you can go to that website and pick up this thing in entirety. This is an executive overview, kind of an abridged look at the thing. And so it goes into a little more depth, and you can pick that up on it. But we think it's been a very valuable index, and it's a good basis, a good solid basis for which to kind of plan and look at the things. The other thing it does, I think, is say to you, you're having a few problems, you know what, so's America, so's Michigan. It's not just you, right? So these are the trends that are happening. So there are areas we have to keep track of, and as you saw over and over and over, same theme, was employees and talent and skills. And so that's why we put together this panel of experts who I'm going to call up to the table now, and we're going to get going with that and have each one of them present a little bit. And so as I call your name, if you would, panelists, come on up and take a seat. First is Brian Cervello. He's a career and technical education director for the Marquette Elger RESA. Big round of applause for him. Come on. All right, next up is Bill Raymond, currently the CEO of the Upward Talent Council, which is the Michigan Works organization for the Upper Peninsula. Bill. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks, Chris.
Nice.
You too.
All right, then third up is Ruth Solinsky. Ruth is a very respected business and human resources thought leader with demonstrated results in building, sustaining labor and employee relationships, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's too long to know. Thank you for being here. And then finally, Robert Esslinger. He's currently the interim dean of the College of Technology and Occupational Sciences at Northern Michigan University. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you being here. All right, so we brought these people in so that they can present a little bit. And again, informal. If you got a question, hop your hand up and we'll get you. If you leave here with an unanswered question, it's your own fault. So don't let that happen. All right, so let's run down the line, Brian. We'll start with you. Maybe a couple of minutes, kind of on what you're doing and who you are and how you got invited here.
Sure. Well, I can't answer that last question. I'm going to switch down. Does anyone have a problem hearing me? I'm a former coach, so I don't typically have a problem being heard. So as current technical education director at the Market House of Reese, I oversee all of our vocational programming in our two-county area. And I have to begin, first of all, Chris, by throwing a compliment out to our local schools. Unlike most of the state, we don't collect the CT millage to support our current technical education programming at the high school level. It exists, and it exists in a very robust state, thanks very much to our superintendents and our school boards who see the importance of it and support it through their own general funds. So that's the first thing I have to say. Secondly, I have to say this. Whenever we're talking about talent acquisition and the talent pipeline, it has to begin at the high school level. What we find from our data from over a couple of decades is that for students who complete a high school CT program, 75% of them remain in that same career pathway. 75%, 3/4 of those kids will start their first job in a career in that same career pathway. So the message to employers is if you want to develop that pipeline, develop it at the high school level. We can guarantee you that we'll send talent your way, but we've got to have the opportunity to be able to provide those programs for those students to match their interests. The other thing I would say is this. For the longest time, I think we made a huge mistake in the message that we send to young people when we tell them, just follow your passion, be happy. Okay, that's probably about as faulty as following the 4-year degree fits everyone advice. We should be telling our kids, bring your passion to everything you do, because you're going to have multiple careers over your lifetime, and just be passionate about everything you do, and that dream job will find you eventually.
So thank you. Appreciate that, Brian. Bill?
Yes, well, I'm happy to be here. I'm the new CEO for Upward Talent Council, Michigan Works. So if you can get confused about that name, just do what Amy did, just push them together and we're it. But you may know that Michigan Works is now UP-wide. There used to be 3 different regions, now there's 1. So our territory, from Sault Ste. Marie to Ironwood and up to Houghton and Keweenaw and down to St. Ignace, so the whole 9 yards, so to speak. So I came from Ottawa County Michigan Works in the Holland Grand Haven area. Similar population to the UP, but it went from 600 square miles to about 17,000. So it's a little bigger territory, but I'm having a great time up here. Started the job in June, so I've been here about 5 months, and would like to introduce Tony Ratasky, who's on our workforce board right there, and Sally Richard, who's our workforce services manager here at the Marquette office. So, and they're great people to work with. We've got a great board and great staff. So, but for Michigan Works, I try to tell people Michigan Works can be rather inscrutable. We have enough bureaucracy and federal and state regulations to kind of make your eyes glaze over. But maybe just take a little different tack here. What I want to emphasize with Michigan Works is how do we work together, collaborate with economic development, education, planning organizations, government officials, businesses, you name it, and whoever else needs to be in there. But how do we grow the economy in the Upper Peninsula by providing the talent that businesses need? And how do we do that in a very collaborative way? Because none of us can do it alone. And Brian and I've been here a few months, and I've seen Brian quite a bit. We're working together on a lot of things. The same with LSCP and Amy. There's a lot of different connections and all kinds of other organizations here. I've really been impressed. I mean, Chris, you mentioned the UP and the collaboration and the working together, and I've seen that in the last few months. So to me, that's encouraging. But right now, again, the biggest thing that we hear from businesses is talent, and we hear of businesses, especially manufacturing, talking about, well, I would expand, but we don't have the people. They're turning down contracts for lucrative contracts for the things that they produce simply because they can't find the people. And people ask me, what's the solution to that? Well, I say somewhat tongue-in-cheek, probably cloning, because I'm not sure what else we can do. There's some short-term things we can do, and I'll probably have a chance to talk about that in a bit. But the long-term is we're kind of in that area between what is and the not yet. So as we talk about what's coming down the road in the next few years, few decades, artificial intelligence, robotics, autonomous vehicles, we're kind of, what will be the jobs of the future, and how do we handle the short-term needs now, knowing that short-term solutions are not the long-term solutions. So there's a lot of uncertainty around that. So with Michigan Works and a lot of our federal funding, we want to be able to use that to help companies grow in the short term and find the talent they need. But I talked about this with our workforce board yesterday. To me, that's kind of below the line stuff. It's not bad, but it's not the whole picture. How do we live above the line here and doing creative, innovative things, putting our heads together, collaborating with education, economic development, and do what we need to do, and just discern this as we go, because there's not a magic bullet for this. We really have to grapple with this. So how do we live above that line and really do creative, innovative things to handle this talent issue?
Yeah, thanks, Bill, appreciate that. Ruth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ruth Selinsky. I don't know why I was invited to be on this panel either, so I'm just going to move into my background is I have about 25 years of experience in human resources and creating and responding to talent shortages. I currently own my own consulting business and work with a variety of businesses on helping them think through their talent acquisition strategies. Before I struck out on my own, I served as the regional vice president of HR for the 3 hospitals affiliated with LifePoint in the Upper Peninsula. And certainly one of our challenges from a recruitment standpoint was related to physicians, and had an opportunity to work with a team to help build a really robust talent acquisition strategy. We did that by looking out at all of the things that are unique and positive about the Upper Peninsula, and creating a value proposition that really spoke to those things, and made significant improvements in our ability to attract and retain physicians. As we think about what we're going to do moving forward to kind of address the issue of talent shortage, I have a passion for engaging. Your cheapest recruit is your current staff member, right? And so how do we build robust cultures and invest in our people in ways that make them feel connected to our organization? There's some work that I refer to all the time. It's not my work. It's work by Daniel Pink and around motivation. Yes, absolutely. And some of his meta research says that the way that we engage employees and connect with their passions, even though some days you're just going to be stuck with routine tasks. But there's a couple of things that employees are really looking for from us as employers. One would be self-mastery, right? So getting better all the time. A connection to the broader world. So the reality is that our future employees want to know that they're making the world a better place. So as leaders, we have to be visionary in the way that we move forward in creating a compelling story about why they're doing what they're doing. And then the third piece is that they want to be consistently learning, right, within our organizations. And so that's where I think I can add some value.
So remember, Ruth is the one who said she didn't know why she was invited. Robert, if you would.
Well, as mentioned, I'm currently the Dean of the College of Technology and Occupational Sciences at Northern Michigan University. I think most of you in the room know Northern is a regional comprehensive university, but we have a unique role, and we're unique within the state of Michigan in that we also have or play a community college role. And most of the core of that resides in my college, in the College of Technology and Occupational Sciences. We offer 11 certificate programs, 6 associate programs, and 2 baccalaureate programs. And those are in 10 topic areas that would generally fall under CTE, everything from automotive, aviation, HVAC, cosmetology, hospitality management, hospitality and tourism management, industrial maintenance, building technology, construction management, welding, and electrical line tech, which we partner with the industry and with LSCP Foundation for. As I mentioned, the College of Technology and Occupational Sciences plays a large role in CTE, both in the region and in the northern part of the state. And because of demographics, we also now look beyond those areas for students. And that's important not only to industry that resides out of the area, but it's also important to industry that's in the area. And I'll explain that probably later in the question. Industry input is really important to our what we do on a daily basis. And the college is relatively new. As was mentioned earlier, there's a renewed emphasis on CTE, and this college was recreated within Northern last year. And it was done so really to show the emphasis, to prove the emphasis that the university has on these programs, and also be more strategic in looking out into the future. How do we address those issues that everyone here has already mentioned? The way that we do that currently, and I'll just say this briefly, but we have program advisory boards with all of our programs who represent both local in the case of our auto program and national in the case of our construction management program. We have folks on our advisory board from as far away as Texas on our construction management advisory board, because that's where the students go from that program, or that's part of where the students go. We're always looking for input, and we participate in a number of regional committees and stakeholders boards for that purpose. One of the things that was mentioned earlier, one of our issues is always trying to balance industry needs with student interest. And that tends to be sometimes problematic. And just by a very quick way of example, we spent a lot of time a year ago listening to industry's needs as it pertained to a very entry-level position in manufacturing. We got that from especially the central 6 counties of the UP. We went around to those counties with a plan how we were going to address that with a very short-term program, and we put that into place in about 4 months, which for higher education is moving at the speed of sound, and we had like very little student interest, like none. At first, and we poured a bunch of money into advertising. That's one of the reasons why I asked that advertising question. And so I just say that because industry played a really big role in us creating that program. We heard what they said. We put a program together, and then we chopped it to them. I mean, we literally. I went at the time. I was not the dean. I was serving in a different position. I went with then the current dean, and we went to each of those companies that we had heard from. And we sat down with them with the draft curriculum and said, this is what we're planning to do. Does this meet the need that you showed us? And they were excited. They were all in, and they were excited for it. And in the end, we have had a very difficult time getting student interest. So that's part of the challenge. The other part of the challenge is when industry needs employees is not always when we're ready to spit them out the other end of the educational pipeline. And so it becomes very difficult to, when we get the phone call and they say, I need 24 technicians today. I wish I could, but we can't give you 24 technicians today. And as you probably know, one of the ways that we're measured is how we, the percentage of students that complete these programs. So it's really important once they start it to complete it, and that becomes a challenge, especially when you talk about CTE type programs, community college type programs. That's one of the challenges that community colleges have, and it's one of the challenges that we share with them, that students come to better themselves and to get a better job, and when they get that, they're ready to go. So we've done some things. I'll give you, for example, our automotive program. We now have a credential for every student when they finish the first year. We match that with what some of the industry needs were, but we give that credential because we lose students at the end of that first year a lot. And we want to make sure that when they're ready to come back, that they come back and everything that they did with us gets credit. So the way to do that is we have a certificate now that first year auto students get. They go away, we know they're going to have to come back. They're going to stay in that industry. They're going to, it's lifelong learning. Everything is going to be lifelong learning. We know that. But we know that, and we want to make sure when they do come back that they get 100% credit for the work that they've done there. So that's kind of the things that we've put in place last year that we're looking to help not only industry but students because they're facing the same issues. It's on the other end of the stick.
Those are really good programs. And again, the informality, if you've got a question, raise your hand. By the same token, if somebody on the panel is provoked into a thought, gee, jump in, and share it, because don't wait for us to ask questions. It's kind of interesting because one of the things is just pure arithmetic. I've got a long history with Michigan Works as well. Capillary Michigan Works, I've been on their board for about 18 years, and presently chair a thing called T3, which is bringing industry and schools together so the curriculums match up to the needs. And it was interesting because the former director of that Capillary Michigan Works, we met for lunch about 15 years ago. And he said, I've just been looking at some statistics that scare me. And in the year 2014, we're going to run out of workers. That was unbelievable to me. And he said, it's sure arithmetic. All us baby boomers that are lopping off and retiring, there's a lower number coming in, right? Ruth, you alluded to this. You want to talk to this circumstance a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that Chris and I talked about earlier is today throughout the United States, there are about 6 million job openings and there's 6.1 million job seekers. So we're essentially at a period of full employment. The challenge is that those jobs don't necessarily match up with the prevailing skill of the job seekers. So while it seems like we'll just go grab those 6.1 million job seekers and put them into jobs, that's not our reality, because it just doesn't line up that way. I do think we're in a period, if Amazon is to our local mall, based on the fact that we have so many people exiting the workforce, we're in a period where talent acquisition has been fully disrupted. So the strategies that we used to use are not going to be effective in finding people and onboarding employees into our organizations. So we're going to have to really think, and I hate this term, but we're going to have to think outside of the box as far as how we are engaging potential employees. Everything from using data, to Bob's point, to understand what students really want to do with their lives, because again, it's a seller's market. It's not up to us to decide that we're going to craft this job and put it out there. We have to engage that particular group, and I think your point about really starting in high school is a really important one, because they're in charge. Like it or not, they're in charge. We need them more than they need us. So we really have to engage with them to determine what are your desires, interests, for the future of work going to be. So I would pass the baton to you to talk about.
Thank you, Ruth. That's a perfect segue, because when I talk about, starting that pipeline at the high school level, it really needs to start at the K-12 level.
Mm-hmm.
We need a continuum of career and technical education experiences and work-based learning experiences for our students, so that when it comes to 8th grade, when students in Michigan have to basically design their plan for high school and their road through high school, which we call an educational development plan, an EDP, that they're informed, that they're making an informed decision. Right now, we don't have many kids choosing career and technical education as they come into high school, and that's certainly not as many as we would like, simply because they've never been exposed to it. Quite honestly, if we give kids that hands-on career and technical education experience, as I said, 3/4 of them fall in love with it. That's what they want to do. That's at least where they're going to start their career. But we also exist for that other 25%, because it's really critical for them to have that experience in that industry and maybe make that decision, no, this is not for me, rather than after a couple of years of college, okay? Because we don't have time to waste with our talent. We need to help them find their niche, find their interest, and direct them in that way, and then have quality programs that will prepare them for post-secondary. We work very, very closely with Northern Michigan University. All of our high school programs are aligned perfectly with their programs, and in fact, our students in every one of our CTE programs earn college credit from Northern Michigan University because we are so closely aligned and because of the quality of instruction that students receive at the high school level. And that's a good impetus for a lot of our students to say, hey, maybe I am qualified for college. Maybe I can be successful in college. We run a number of programs right on their campus. And in a lot of cases, that's those kids who otherwise would have said, I don't think college is for me. But after spending a year or two in our programs, they say, yeah, I can do this. I can do this, which is really critical. The other thing is, we're so very fortunate to have some incredible industry partners Megan Morrison is here from Eagle Mine. You couldn't ask for a better corporate partner in terms of supporting that early pipeline than Eagle Mine, from their support to our current technical education programs, to our technical middle college, which gives kids who otherwise would have never had a chance to earn a college scholarship or a college degree a chance to do that. That's the other important part of developing that pipeline is that industry participation as well. Because I'll tell you what, we could have the best career and technical education curriculum and the best employability skills curriculum, which is what we hear most often from employers, is that these students are coming with us with zero soft skills. Well, we could have the best curriculum in the world, but we don't know if it's effective until we actually put young people out in the workplace. So we're seeing a growth in our internship placements out of our current technical education programs, giving kids a chance to experience the industry firsthand with employers. And it's been incredibly successful to the point where those employers want to hire those people even before they complete their college degree. Those are the types of partnerships that we need to develop if we truly want to see that pipeline at its fullest.
Robert?
And just to follow on to something Brian said, the other thing that you have is we've seen a really high percentage of articulation from those kids who are exposed to those programs in high school coming into the university, both in the health sciences and also in the areas that come under the College of Technology and Occupational Sciences. So there is a correlation between their exposure and coming in. They just don't know what they don't know in a lot of cases unless there's been that exposure. We started through our continuing ed and workforce development department a couple of years ago, a summer program, summer trade skills program for kids. And the idea is to try to introduce younger kids, younger than that were ready to come to college, to some of the things that they would be exposed to in the trades. Now we didn't do it exactly along our program lines because it's not going to resonate with some of the kids. So we did things like bicycle repair, we did some small engine repair, just some things just to get them thinking and get them to the university, get them exposed to some of the, and it's been very, very successful. We've filled that program. I think we're now on, this year will be our 4th year, and we've filled those classes 4 times. And this year, working with QPAD, we're probably going to expand that, and we are going to expand that to include kids from all 6 of the central counties.
And after just 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of students who have stated they are in a high school CT program because of the summer camps.
Wow, that's interesting. Bill, you had a comment.
Yeah, kind of a macro trend that we're dealing with goes back to something you said. I mean, part of it is there simply aren't enough workers coming through the pipeline. We know that. But that's a long-term trend. So-called replacement rate and the birth rate, flat replacement rate is 2.1%. We're at 1.9. We're not as bad as Italy and Japan at 1.4. But the numbers, the other situation, a friend of mine has done some calculations taking a look at number of high school graduations going down, number of retirements trending up, about a 30% gap. So we just have that mathematical issue. So how do we address that? I mean, again, some short-term options. Some of the things that Michigan Works is doing, and sometimes in conjunction with Brian and Bob and others. But for example, there's a company in the Delta Menominee area that we've been having some discussions with. But taking a look at kids who are in CTE classes now in some of the local high schools, this company will be doing some major hiring in 2 to 3 years. We're trying to identify students now, sophomores, juniors, seniors, who can get on a track to be hired by that company in 3 years. So right now, yeah, so when a company comes and says, I need 24 people now, well, yeah, that's, I feel for you, but I don't necessarily have that people to hand you. But so how do we start developing that pipeline now? And I agree with Brian. You have to start that early on, the K through 12. The Federal Reserve talks about one of the strongest indicators of economic growth and talent development is strong preschool education. So you really need to invest in preschool and making sure kids have that opportunity to be able to move forward and through those processes and be prepared. So things like Head Start. I mean, Head Start's been criticized and up and down and everything else, but that and other types of preschool I think are really key elements of this process. Bill Gates talks about the preschool situation. I come from the Holland area. They have a thing called Ready for School. So it's a measurable of how many kids are ready for kindergarten when they walk in that door on day one. So the metric is, I think they've gone from 40-something% to up to 60% in the last few years. So they're trying to just build that continuum over time so those kids are ready for kindergarten. Some other things with kind of the CTE. In Delta County, the Manufacturing Roundtable, Michigan Works, and the Delta County Economic Development Alliance had a business after hours designed for students, CTE related things, and their parents. They were hoping to get 50 kids there. They had 276. So we're going to be doing more and more of that. Iron County is looking at the same thing, where they have 5 employers who want to be involved with that. But that gets them into those manufacturing facilities, and basically you throw a party, because if you feed them and have some prizes, it tends to increase the turnout. But again, the parents were amazed, and I think because one of the issues that we found is that there are kind of these disparate myths around skilled trades. One, it's dirty. You see Mike Rowe on Dirty Jobs and all that stuff, but manufacturing has changed. I mean, if you go to West Michigan and you're in Hayworth or Herman Miller or Gentex, I mean, that's a clean laboratory type of environment. So, and there are companies up here that do the same thing. Systems Control, Lakeshore Systems, Boss Manufacturing. It's a different world now. So having those types of opportunities for kids and exposing them to that. The other issue, and we found this, and this was tied to the auto industry also, is, okay, yeah, I've got an $80,000 a year job, and your skill level is not necessarily that high. Well, those jobs are going away. The mining situation up here in the UP, very similar. But a lot of parents saying, well, it was good enough for me, it's good enough for you. You don't need any advanced education. It's not just four-year college. You don't need a certificate, you don't need an associate's. Again, how do we capture those kids and build that pipeline now and dispel those myths and get them into the situation of, yes, there are good skilled trades jobs out there, but getting beyond those myths. Somebody have a hand up out there?
I was just going to say I have 3 daughters, and my youngest is 10 years old, and every single one of them started talking about what they wanted to be when they were 10 years old.
Yep.
And the schools, I feel, there are children, which I discussed with my children, there are children in their class that already know that they probably don't have the aptitude for a 4-year degree, they can't afford it. There's a lot of extra after-school programs that do a lot of different things. Why don't we start introducing some of these things, this after-school program? We've got a lot of kids out there at this age, believe it or not, that talk about, they're kind of lost right now because everybody is talking about what they want to be. My child said from 10 years of age, I want to be a teacher. She's at Northern Michigan University. She is studying there right now.
Right.
So it's not too young.
No.
They are talking about it and they are trying to figure it out. And I think it's time we introduce more variety to them, and again, in this skills trade.
Let me take a little kind of prerogative here as the guy with the mic. I'm preaching to the wrong choir here, but well over 50% of a kid's education success is in the home. It's not in the classroom. So if you're talking at your dinner table about these issues, and education is in the forefront, and I'm not saying a 4-year degree, I'm saying education, I'm saying skill levels, I'm saying whatever you want to go into. If you're talking about those things around your dinner table, and your kids have it in their minds, it never occurred to my kids that they weren't going into something. And that's where the battle is won and lost. That's why preschool is so important, the things that are, listen, we're competing with Asia. In Asia, these kids are channeled into the right kindergarten. They are competitive to the kindergarten they're going into. And so it happens in the home. It really does. All right, go ahead, somebody else.
Well, I think the issue with, I have 2 daughters. My standard line was that they're both great kids. There's a normal kid in there somewhere, it just wasn't evenly distributed. But they're both smart, but they're smart in different ways. And it's amazing how many parents I talk to, they have the same 2 kids. So one went one direction, one went another direction. One was pretty easy path. The other one, it struggled a little bit. but how do we capture those kids and help develop that innate ability that they have that plays out differently? And I think that's, you know, that's a combination of education and home environment.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's the state of Colorado, they actually start the conversation about jobs in kindergarten. The parents get a brochure of what the future jobs will be in the state of Colorado when the kids enter kindergarten. And that's
Specifically,
probably
it was Littleton,
was it Littleton? Yeah.
Littleton, Colorado, and that's where they started economic gardening.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, the concept of first robotics.
Yeah.
I was talking to Chris.
There's plenty of models internationally on how to better educate and move students through the system. I mean, Marquette County, we don't have a technical high school, right? But Tony can tell you the kind of money that people are making in the trades versus a four-year degree coming out of Northern, you know? But I don't know that the public gets educated on those opportunities the way we should. Now, it's starting to happen. I mean, there's a lot of different things within our community, but I mean, you have multiple high schools with no Voc Tech high school in the county, right? You go down Iron
Well,
Mountain.
I'll correct you, that's not true.
Yeah.
Most of our career and technical education programs are in our local high schools, and all of our local high schools have either a program on campus there, or we offer programs on the campus of Northern Michigan University that are open to high school students from any Marquette or Elger high school. But again, I go back to our local schools, and we got Superintendent Brian DeAugustine here from Westwood High School. I challenge you to find a high school his size anywhere in the state that has a better technical career education program. We've got Marquette Senior High School's got a tremendously robust career and technical education program as well, and I'd say that about all of our schools. Okay, so the opportunities are there. Again, people aren't aware of them, and you know, we've done somersaults trying to get the word out to people. We're currently right now producing 60-second videos on every single one of our CTE programs that we're hoping to run at parent-teacher conferences, high school orientation for 8th graders, on the social media. Again, trying to get that word out there. I'm very blessed to have a group of committed people. Tony Rataski is one of them, called the Career and Technical Education Committee of Marquette and Elgin County, who are very active in terms of trying to promote career and technical education. And they've done a wonderful job, and they've been great allies of this effort, but it takes everyone, it really does.
So where are we at on time? Because I hate to do this.
Couple minutes left.
A couple minutes left. Okay, so here's the thing. A zillion people out there have programs going to alleviate some of this. I work with Chuck Haddon at the Michigan Manufacturers, and they're out there all around the state getting these types of programs going. Everybody's doing training to get people in the skill levels, and colleges are starting to channel in a better way people to careers as well. What's the long range fix? Because the short-term fix is there's a few things that you can do. What is the long-range fix? What can be done in the long range of things? Yeah, that's what.
Well, I'll tell you.
Oh, we're out of time.
My concern is that the pendulum is going to swing in the complete opposite direction because of the disruptions that are going to take place with autonomous vehicles and some of those other things. When you look at what's going to happen, if the industry goes where it's headed, and we end up with autonomous vehicles at the levels that we're expecting, when we're expecting them, you're going to have an awful lot of people upstream and downstream of that out of work and looking for some kind of career change. And the same with robotics. As I went to the FabTech recently, the big conference in Chicago, and every single booth in FabTech had robotics. There wasn't one booth that didn't have some form of robotics, whether it was welding or whatever the topic. And the disruptions that are going to happen with that are coming, and I don't know how to prepare for that.
And they're coming out of necessity.
Yeah.
They are. Businesses, unfortunately, have to exist.
Right.
And I think that there will be other jobs coming out of that type of disruption, but we're not totally sure what those jobs look like right now.
Right.
So how do we start preparing students to think differently? So it's not necessarily preparing them for this job, but it's kind of a career cluster in how they think and can adapt. And I think that has implications, especially along technology. Just an example, there's a new company, fairly new company called Embark. It's sort of a trucking company, but they created a software. Frigidaire is now using them. So these long-haul trucking, you talk to companies that they need truckers, they need drivers, and they just can't find them. The gap is huge. But what Embark does is they outfit these trucks with this software. So from point to point on the long-haul trucking, they can get that truck to within 100 miles of their destination, but the autonomous vehicle can't negotiate that last 100 miles because of the way the roads are and getting into a more urban area. So what they've hired are short-term regional drivers to take that truck the last 100 miles. Well, this company was started by a college student at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, which is kind of like a Michigan Tech. He's now 23 years old, CEO of this company, working with Frigidaire. Ryder is looking at working with them. But in the short term, that has the potential to help at least solve the trucking issue for companies. Now, that's not a long-term fix, but it's an intermediate fix. So where will that end up down the road? But again, you look at robotics. Okay, what was this guy doing 10 years ago when he was 13 years old? So those types of examples. So over the long haul, I think we need to teach students how to think creatively and be prepared for what's next without knowing what's next.
Yeah, and that's the pendulum starting to swing too, because once you replace those drivers, those jobs don't come back, you know. I always laugh at candidates who run for office and say, we're going to bring those jobs back.
Yeah.
You want me to go, excuse me, those jobs don't exist anymore. So basically, in summary, we have a shortage of talent. There's absolutely no solution. Happy holidays. I would say that I would offer up two very quick things as short-term fixes. So one of them is immigration reform.
Yeah.
There are a lot of brains, a lot of skills, a lot of talents that want to come here, and we close down the number of visas to come. We got to think about that. You know, we got to think about who we're letting in, but we have to think about letting more in. The other is I am the president of AARP Michigan, right? So if you would address me as Mr. President from Vermont, appreciate that. One of the reasons I took it was because I said I want to introduce this program, and it now has become Experience for Hire. And it is filling the talent void by saying, let's bring people out of recent retirement and hire 3 of them at 15, 18 hours a week so that they can still have semi-retirement, make a living, and bring all that experience. A, they don't have the same financial needs. B, they certainly don't need medical. There's a lot of good synergies going on there. So look for that program and that opportunity. So those are a couple of short-term fixes that I think we got to get pretty damn serious about right now. Listen, Brian, Bill, Ruth, Bob, thanks so much for being here. How about a big round of applause? And again, I want to thank all of you for being here because this shows your concern. Amy, thank you for hosting us again, and Jeff, thanks for getting me the right spot. Have a good holidays. It's so wonderful to see you all, and a very prosperous vacation. Take care. Thank you.